Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Akshay. Nobody else is coming?
Yes, sir. They might arrive lately.
Mm, We'll wait for just one more minute and start off.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I don't mind teaching even one student. So, no, seriously.
Yes, sir.
Even physical classes, I have taught one student. So, it's not a big deal for me teaching one student. In fact, last year I even taught people, I even just recorded a lecture and put it on YouTube when nobody came. So it's a pity, everybody says education system has collapsed. Education system has collapsed. Why has it collapsed? I don't know. Who is
Because
responsible?
of
Hmm?
because of students. Because of students.
I don't think so. I think that there are many reasons for it. There are family reasons for it. One is, see, as affluence is growing and when it is becoming less and less important for people to kind of earn their living based on education, uh, education is being seen as unnecessary. And there was this video that I got at random on WhatsApp, and I thought it was an excellent video. There's this completely nondescript person. I don't know who he was. Even the person who made that video with that chap speaking didn't bother to introduce who that man was. What I found striking about that video is that The person speaking, he must have been in his 20s. He says, why are we having this education system? This is an era where we don't need an education system. If you want anything, there is Google. Okay. There are all kinds of computational tools and all those things. So we don't really need to have this elaborate uh, education system where people have to study things and all that. Why do you need to study anything? Is it only some people should be educated so that they can create the Googles, the Wikipedias, um, which is where most students go, and which is unfortunate because quite a few things in the Wikipedia are all rubbish. And if you start looking at all these things, he says, why do we need education? Just let's have literacy, teach people how to use Google, search what they want, and in terms of jobs, let them. Who is doing such a great job anyway? He says most jobs are mechanical, you don't need to have education. I thought that was a good point, an excellent point. Okay, yesterday we were talking about Eric Fromm and automaton conformity and how that leads to the success of ideologues. And I was also talking to you about Herbert Marcuse and his idea of one-dimensional man not having a revolutionary potential, and that is why uh, the revolution that Marx wanted to happen never happened. Then you have Eric Fromm. All these people have, you know, uh, introduced psychoanalysis uh, in conjunction with Marxism to basically um, understand why is it that the Marxist revolution never happened. Okay, why did the nation state continue to persist? Why did the workers of the world not unite? So I'm not going to go back into those arguments that I made yesterday, but it is very important that you must understand the fact that Eric Fromm says that there is automaton conformity because people are afraid of freedom. People are afraid of uh, taking on the responsibility for their actions if they are given freedom. If you are uh, if you are asked to do something by someone, and if you fail, then you can say, look, I was only following orders. But if you have been given the freedom to do things, uh, then you will say, but this is something that, sorry, this is something that I don't want, because then if things go wrong, people will blame me for that. So while on the one hand, we are talking about freedoms, the whole language of liberalism and Marxism, right? Both isms. And anyway, I see Marxism as an offshoot of liberalism. Mainly, it has liberal ideas, but in a different form. Uh, so if you look at, but even if you want to treat it as a separate thing, you'll see that both liberalism and Marxism are premised in the idea of freedom, individual freedom. And but people are afraid of freedoms because freedoms don't come just like that. They come along with uh, this whole thing called responsibility. Okay, and so that is what uh, Eric Fromm says. And he says that leads to automaton. Automaton is a machine like thing. Automaton conformity. So you conform to ideas put forward by ideologues because then you escape responsibility. So that's also why he called it, the second edition of the book came out as Escape from Freedom. The original came as Fear of Freedom. Okay, now I told you about Marcuse. Marcuse also read a book called Eros and Civilization, which is more in line with the Freudian way of things. Uh, and Freud believed that everything that people did had something to do with the sexual urge. That was Freud's theory. And you will find that Marcuse is using something like that when he wrote Eros and Civilization. Eros is the basis for erotic, the word erotic or erotica, if you want. Uh, so, and he says in the other book, which is more relevant in this particular context, One Dimensional Man, which is almost like the automaton conformity thing, but slightly different in the sense that as long as people have something to lose, as long as people have something to lose, then they will not be revolutionaries. So the rich will not want to be a part of the revolution because they're rich and they want to continue that privileged position in society. Perhaps the uh, only exception to that is Count Cavour, who was a nobleman but wanted a revolution. Uh, but he also, Marcuse also says that the middle classes actually fear revolution even more than the rich because they don't have much, though they have something. They don't have much, and it is not having too much, but having enough that makes them one dimensional because their only interest is to preserve what they have, not lose whatever they have, which is a possibility if you take part in a revolution. And in that, he also includes the proletariat, the revolutionary class that was identified by Marx. And he says even the proletariat has something to lose. They have a daily livelihood. And if a revolution happens, turmoil happens, they are afraid of any kind of social turmoil because then that'll rob them of their livelihoods. Like, for example, um, there's lockdowns. Okay, last year when this lockdown was announced and we went in for a prolonged lockdown, we saw that 70 lakh people lost their jobs. 70 lakhs. And MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises, closed down. Many MSMEs closed down due to lack of uh, capital flow. Due to the lack of capital flow, they couldn't sustain their workers, they couldn't pay their wages, and lo and behold, they closed down. So the damage was colossal. And now it's going to happen again, okay? Because you've imposed a lockdown suddenly without any warning. The people who get their salaries without any um, problem, people who have enough stacks of money, these are all people who'll be fine. Uh, but people who have to work every day to get their job, to keep their jobs, those are the people who are afraid of a lockdown. It is very ironic. There was a problem with my internet yesterday. Um, and so this chap from Act Fibernet, he came and he asked me, is it true that there's going to be a lockdown? I said, I have no idea. Uh, the chief minister said 3 days ago that there's no question of a lockdown. But he usually doesn't say what he means and doesn't uh, mean, and he does things that he doesn't say. So I told him I don't know, as maybe a possibility. He said, sir, if that happens, then I'm in a problem because first thing, my salary will be deducted till the lockdown is lifted. I won't get a salary, and after that, I don't know if Act will take me back. They might not. So they have this anxiety. Okay, they have this anxiety about losing what they may have already, even if it is a daily wage job. Even if it is a daily wage job, even if it means that you have to go and search for that job, people are afraid of losing that opportunity to search and find a job. Okay, so that is why Marcuse says that human beings become one dimensional, and the only two sections of society that he says can have a revolutionary potential, but can they really carry out a revolution on their own? Is the question, he says. But the lumpen proletariat, LUMPEN, lumpen proletariat is the unemployed, those who were once workers but are no longer having jobs and are not working anymore. So these are the people who will basically, they have the capacity, or rather they might have the mindset for a revolution, because they have everything to gain and absolutely nothing to lose. And students who might want a better society for themselves in the future uh, are the second category of people he talks as being potential revolutionaries. But as it was shown uh, in France in the 1960s, in a number of French universities like the Paris Sorbonne University, the Institute for Sciences, all these had a Maoist uh, revolution kind of a thing they tried to attempt, which died on its own. I told you, Jean-Luc Godard actually made a film about that. Uh, and it shows how it's a documentary, it's not a feature film. It actually shows how things were on the French campuses. Okay, and but there is a point that people overlook in Herbert Marcuse when he talks about this thing called anxiety about the future. He says, as long as people have an anxiety about the future, they will not revolt. Okay? Because they'll always find reasons not to revolt and have a rebellion. So, this is what he borrowed from Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud called this existential anxiety. No, that's not the spelling. What is wrong with me? Yeah, existential anxiety. So he basically argues that since we don't know why we are born, since we don't know why we are in this world, since we don't know why we have to put up with things that we don't like, what are we doing in this world anyway? This is a question that plagues everybody's mind at some point or the other. At some point or the other, these are questions that pop up in people's minds. Okay, the thing about what are we doing here? Okay, why do we have to put up with this life? Is there any meaning to our existence? right? And I had told you that if you look at existentialism of the French variety, it says that there's nothingness to our existence. And Jean-Paul Sartre wrote that book, Being and Nothingness. So existentialism says that our existence is pointless. It doesn't have any meaning that we need to dig out, search. Okay, so Sigmund Freud talked about existential anxiety, and he said people conform because of their existential anxiety. As it is, even when you are supposedly in a tranquil state of mind, even when you are in a tranquil state of mind, you don't think in terms of revolutions. You don't think of changing the social order. You don't think of all those things. Okay? Because your existential anxiety is something that is pushing you towards safer, uh, what should I say, towards safer options. It is trying to get you to calm your mind down, not agitate it further. That is what Freud says. So, if you look at his origins of religion, for him, it is all rooted in this existential anxiety. What is religion? Religion is palliative as far as uh, Freud is concerned. It's palliative because it says there is a God who will look after us and take care of us in our times of crisis. That is the reason why he says everybody turns to religion. First, it is God who's there, to whom you can pray, and you can basically uh, ask for protection from problems. So he says that is how it all begins. And then he also says, because he's a Christian, church going communities are those which are based in mutual support. So, this is what you will find in Freud. So, it's not just God. Okay, in the name of God, when we go, In the name of God, when we go to church and we become pious human beings, okay, and then we pledge humanitarian support to each other, then we are taking care of not all, but some of the insecurities that come with existential anxiety. Okay, that is the reason why. What are you doing, Madam Freshta? Hmm? So, yeah, so this is basically what Freud says. We try to reduce our uh, insecurities, our anxiety by turning to religion, which gives you a God and fellow church going members who will be a part of your community. Okay, so that is what Freud says. Sorry. Though the later psychology, the new psychology that has come, debunks or says it debunks everything that Freud said. Most of what psychology talks is, in my opinion, horse nonsense. Uh, Psychiatry embraced Freud because he was a medical doctor, first and foremost, and he trained himself to try and understand the workings of the minds of human beings. And so he is accepted by the medical community, the community of psychiatrists, and rightly so, because a number of Freudian arguments have the potential for a macro level explanation, as opposed to going into each person's mind and saying, I know what is in your mind. I know what is in your mind. That kind of a thing is not something that you'll find in uh, uh, in Freud. Freud is basically constructing a macro level theory that explains human behavior. Why do people embrace certain ideas? Why do they reject certain ideas? He's answering those questions. And true to the nature of what is actually called a grand theory, a grand theory is this large theory that explains what is happening. Okay, it is something that explains what is happening in society, not just one or two developments, but most of the developments of society. In Freud, in Marcuse, in Eric Fromm, you find glimpses of the grand theory. Now, if you look at another thinker, Wilhelm Reich. Okay, he wrote a very great book. The title of that book is The Mass Psychology of Fascism. This is the book that was written by Wilhelm Reich at the time of the great economic sorry this okay, the great economic depression in Europe, which started in 1929 and went on until about 1937. And if you've done your international relations, you might have seen all the setting up of the Bretton Woods institutions at this particular time, and also of the Marshall Plan, the Dawes Plan, and the different Locarno pacts that were signed between various nations in order to overcome the Great Economic Depression. Uh, Wilhelm Reich wrote this book at that time, okay, in that period. And please remember, this is the interwar period. Interwar meaning the period between the First World War and the Second World War. In the interwar period, he wrote this, and at the time when fascism was reigning supreme along with Nazism. Now, Reich argues that even Nazism is a form of fascism. Okay, so let's be very careful about this. Okay, Nazism is actually National Socialism. Now, what you need to do here is forget the socialism part for a minute and underline that national. Okay, Hitler's success, I told you, was built on two things. First, uh, the humiliation meted out to Germany through the Treaty of Paris of 1919 and the Treaty of Versailles of 1921, where economic war reparations were imposed upon Germany by the Allied powers. Sorry. And it was argued by um, Hitler that the whole of the German race was insulted and that they had to avenge these insults. And therefore, he said, we Germans are actually superior, the Aryan superiority. And he created the swastika. But I don't know if you've noticed how they write the swastika. I don't know. I could never ever write the swastika the way the Germans write it. It also stands for, people say, the dreaded wing of the Nazi party, which was called the SS Waffen. Okay, SSWAFFEN. We'll worry about the translation later. I don't want to go into that and waste time. But nationalism, as far as Reich is concerned, the kind of nationalism that was being built by Hitler was a fascist. Together we stand, divided we fall. Hitler actually used to say that. Okay, together we stand, divided we fall. And Benito Mussolini called his party fascist based on a fasce. He said it is up to us to come together and stay together, then people will not break us and we'll be able to take colonies in Africa. That's what was promised by Benito Mussolini. And to a certain extent, that colonial part is also applicable to the Nazi party and Hitler. Hitler also talked about colonialism and how they required some colonies in Africa, and how France and uh, England had monopolized the colonies there. So you see, he doesn't distinguish between Nazism and fascism, he meaning Wilhelm Reich. So for him, the whole idea of fascism is to be seen in both Italy and Germany in the interwar period under the respective leaderships of uh, Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. Okay, so you will find that he's using fascism as a generic kind of an ideology here. And what he's saying is, when he's arguing about the mass psychology of fascism, the question that he's asking is not a positive question, it's a negative question. Due to the Great Economic Depression, poverty reigned in Europe. Yet at that time, you'll find in European countries, I'm giving you the example that Reich himself gives in the mass psychology of fascism. He talks about bakeries. And he says these bakeries have all glass so that they can display their products. So they have a glass window through which you can look at. And then the products are also put, even today. Today's bakeries are no different from the bakeries of those times. Okay, they are put in glass enclosures so that you can point out and say, yeah, that is what I want. So everything there is made of glass. There's abundant food. There are cakes, there are pastries, there are all kinds of baked products. And most of European cooking is baking, unlike ours. So the question that Reich raises is, why didn't people who were starving, who were hungry, why didn't they all just go break into this bakery and take the food and eat it? Why didn't they do it? Okay, so he's basically asking this particular question. If a big mob of people, of hungry people went, what will the baker do? In a bakery, there'll be a maximum of 3 people. So if these people just went in, broke through the glass and took the food, nothing could have stopped them. Nothing could have stopped them. But it didn't even occur. It didn't even occur to those people that we can do this. We can go and pick it up. So that is why he says this is a mass psychology. Fascism is not an individual psychology. It is a mass psychology, and it is something that is exploited by leaders like Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. Now, when I say fascism is a mass psychology, we are not saying that these people practice fascism as Benito Mussolini or Hitler did, which is crushing revolt, crushing anybody who dared to question them. Antonio Gramsci, who was a friend of Benito Mussolini and initially a supporter of the fascist party, he was somebody who was imprisoned by Mussolini only because he was his friend. Otherwise, if it was somebody else, he would have been executed. Okay, so what you find is the mass psychology of fascism is an argument which says that people, for their emotional security, that is the key phrase, emotional security, this is the key phrase. For emotional security, they want to be a part of a fasce. You draw comfort even when you're hungry. Even when you're hungry, you draw comfort from the fact that you're a part of a larger group. You want to be a part of a larger group. So you see, if something becomes trendy, why does it become trendy? It becomes trendy because you want to be like everyone else. You don't want to be different. Very few people want to be different. People want to mingle and be a part of a crowd. And that is how political movements are built. That is the argument that Wilhelm Reich is making. The mass psychology of fascism is nothing but the desire of the people to be a part of a movement for the sake of emotional security. Whether it is Mussolini's party or it is Hitler's party, people want the security of being with the establishment. So this brings me to that all important point that I had made of ideologues. If I tell Akshay Puneet, Akshay,
Yes, sir.
I will ensure that you will get into IAS. Okay, you support me in what I do. All right, and bring a few more people who all want to get into IAS. I will support you people and make sure that you'll get into IAS. If I say that, I'll have a following behind me. I'll have a following behind me because I'm giving somebody the assurance, or in this case, a reassurance that somebody requires. There is uncertainty over getting a particular position, IAS. Now, if I say I will arrange for it, don't worry, but you be with me and do what I ask you to do. They will do. That is the argument that Wilhelm Reich is making with this whole thing about uh, mass psychology of fascism. Yeah, today we are hungry. Right.
Sir,
Yes, ma'am.
so what if one disagrees? Will all follow his way in that disagreement?
No,
No, that also can be a mass this thing, no?
it can be, but the disagreement needs solid grounds.
Okay.
It needs solid grounds. Okay, unless just a disagreement is not something that people will listen to and follow them. No, you have to build a case like Hitler did. What was Hitler's case? War reparations, humiliation heaped on Germany through the Treaty of Paris and the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, and
Right.
how the Germans need to get together and show to the world that they are the best. So that context has to be there. A powerful context is necessary. Mussolini did the same thing. He said, why should only England and France have colonies in Africa? Why can't we Italians have colonies? We should have colonies. We haven't had colonies because, unlike them, we became a nation state very late. We became a nation state towards the end of the 19th century. We meaning the Italians. It was under Mazzini and Garibaldi that you find that the Italian nation state was built with some help from Count Cavour. Similarly, it was Bismarck. Bismarck ruled with an iron fist. And Bismarck was the one who was actually responsible for the unification of Germany finally. Otherwise, they were not getting unified. So they are the two last nation states in Europe. And that's why you don't find German colonies. You don't find Italian colonies. What do you find? You find Spanish colonies in abundance. You find English colonies. You find French colonies. You find Dutch colonies, Portuguese colonies, but not Italian colonies and German colonies. So he said, we are a nation who is no less than anyone else. We can have our own colonies. And if you come together and stand with me, I'll prove to you that we can go conquer parts of Africa and make them our colonies and come out of this economic recession. That was the context. Mind you, these are rebels. These are not conformist leaders. Adolf Hitler is a rebel,
Right.
as is Mussolini. He's also a rebel. In Spain, General Franco was a rebel, but they chose grounds on which people reverberated with them and became a part of their movement. The same thing can be said about the separate Telangana movement. The Andhra people did this, the Andhra people did that. These all may not be truths. Some of them are only half truths. Some of them are not at all truths. I used to write a blog saying, on what grounds do you want a division? And people were telling me, are you mad? At this time you're writing a blog, you'll be kicked. I said, if I'll be kicked, I'll be kicked. Okay. So not everybody who is different, not everybody who is becoming some kind of uh, projecting himself as a leader. No, it doesn't
Sir,
work. Yes, sir.
do people follow leaders blindly or with a reason?
It is not blindly. It is with a reason, but they don't examine if the reasons being cited are really what they are. So most of the time, leaders present half-truths. That's what I'm trying to establish here. Leaders, they present half-truths, which means there is a superficial evidence which supports what they are saying. It might not stand deep scrutiny. It might not stand deep scrutiny, but if you are looking at the half truths, and if you say I accept this, then you will find that people follow leaders. They need to see the veneer of truth. If you remove the veneer and examine, you might find out that it is not a full truth. It's just a half truth. You might find that out. You just might find that out. Okay, so it's not a blind following. If they follow blindly, then they'll follow everybody blindly. It's not like that, no? How many people follow Gadar? Nobody follows Gadar. I don't think he has a followership. I don't think he's a leader. He might have a bunch of 10, 15 people behind him. That's about it. Right? So leadership is the ability to convince. And I think Mr. K. Chandrasekhar Rao is exactly that, what I'm talking about. He presented half-truths convincingly to people, and lo and behold, he had this whole support of the people. A separate Telangana happened. Not only that, he has become chief minister twice. And on the one hand, they have been showing in the last few days that the positivity rate has been coming down in Telangana. Okay. They have said at one time there were 8,000 cases about 5 days ago. Now it has come down to 4,000 cases. Now, why do you want to have a lockdown? Now, why do you want to have a lockdown, and that too so suddenly? Actually do an analysis.
Yes, sir. This is all misleading. We know that it's false, not even half truth.
Yeah. So just look at what happened. Till 7th of May, they gave injections to everybody who was above the age of 45. You had to go to that CoWIN app and get your slot booked, right? Then suddenly, before that they said even 18 years. And one fine day they said no, only people above 45 years. We are going back to that. Why? Because we don't have enough dosages of vaccines. All right. So first you said all, then you made it 45 plus, and till 7th you gave injections, first dose of Covishield to people. Suddenly, on the evening of the 7th, you announce that from 8th onwards, there will be no first shot of the vaccine being given to people. We are going to give vaccine only to those who are going to take their second shot. Suddenly, No preparation, nothing. After 3 days, we will stop giving first dose. After 2 days, we will stop giving. No, suddenly, 3 days ago, the chief minister, he said there is no question of imposing a lockdown. That was headlines in one of the newspapers. We are not even considering a lockdown. That is what he said. Now, suddenly, he says, lockdown for 10 days. Why? What changed in the 3 days? If you look at the figures, that are being given to you, what are the figures showing? I'm talking about government figures because this is a government decision. The figures are showing your positivity rate coming down, your death rate coming down, the figures that you're giving us, and the number of infected people coming down from 8,000 to 4,000, 50% reduction in 3 days. And now you impose a lockdown? How? Going by their figures and their arguments, the answer to this is simple. They have run out of vaccines. If you put a lockdown, you're buying 10 days' time to get vaccines again. Right now, we have run out of vaccines. Those Sputnik V or 5, I don't know what that is. They have been unloaded in crates, but they have not been uncrated because people don't know whether that Russian vaccine should be given or not. They don't know. And that these figures are fudged has been shown. I have an old student of mine uh, from the PG college. For some strange reason, he decided that I'm his guru. He calls me that, and I said, please don't. I don't have a single quality that any guru should have. But he says, no, sir. And he calls me every 3 days, 4 days to find out how I am. And he told me he's now with the RSS. He's an RSS chap. And he knows that I'm not pro RSS. But still, he maintains a relationship with me. And he was telling me that he's now working in Warangal, Hanmakonda region. And in the MGM hospital, I think Akshay will know about this particular hospital.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. He says he called me on Saturday. No, not Saturday, Sunday. He called me on Sunday. He said between 9 p.m. on Friday evening and 8 p.m. on Saturday evening, I believe he was in that shift, wearing PPE kits and all and being with the patients, helping them out. And he says 135 people died. And on those days, Our government showed 30 people, 32 people as dying. And yet another time, not too long ago, about a week ago perhaps, Deccan Chronicle carried out, they made two correspondents sit outside Gandhi Hospital and the Telangana Institute of Medical Sciences. And in that, you will see that they said they counted the dead in one day, 12 hours, 130 people died totally in these two hospitals. 80 in Tim's and 50 in Gandhi Hospital. So 130 people died in just two hospitals. That too, state-run hospitals. So they did this as an expose in Deccan Chronicle. Okay. So now we're being told half-truths. Now, do they work forever? That is a question. Do they work forever? Maybe not. Because once you start a movement, you have to keep the momentum going. Okay, and all these ideologues and all these leaders, they work on, or rather they succeed by othering someone. It is us versus them. Us versus them. We are the ones who have not received what we should. They have taken away what is due to us. So that is the us in them. So please remember that these kind of movements, fascist movements, whether they are worldwide, nationwide, or within a nation, the Telangana movement was a Telangana fasce. These succeed by othering someone, saying that the other took away. I don't know if you read the Sri Krishna Committee report. The Sri Krishna Committee report basically showed economic development in Telangana by removing Hyderabad out of it, and the justification for removing Hyderabad out of it was that it is now integrated into the global economy, and whatever was happening in Hyderabad was not something that was to be counted as Telangana, growth rate in Telangana, the economy of Telangana, because it's integrated into the global economy. They have studied Telangana and they've said Telangana is in no way less developed than regions in Andhra Pradesh or Andhra at that time. There was no Andhra Pradesh separately. So they called it Andhra because the whole state was called. They said Telangana was 7 times more developed than the north coastal districts of Andhra Pradesh. 7 times more developed than the north coastal districts. Okay. And if you take the case of Rayalaseema, Telangana was 3.3 times more developed than the Rayalaseema region. The rest of coastal Andhra Pradesh, which was, the Krishna district, the Guntur district, and the Godavari, 2 Godavari districts, the development was almost on par. Telangana was less developed than these districts by 0.3%. So Karl Marx, the Sri Krishna Committee report, all of them have shown that you cannot create a fasce through economics and statistics. You cannot create a fasce by showing this. First of all, nobody read that report. I think I would have been one of the 20 or 25 people who read that report. Okay. But the Telangana fasce was created on the grounds that we've been ill-treated. Okay. And then what do you see? When the BJP makes a dent, when it wins a by-election in Dubbaka, and when it decides to descend on Hyderabad to fight the GHMC elections, starting with the Prime Minister, the Union Home Minister, the Union Minister of State for Home Affairs, the President of the Bharatiya Janata Party, they're all here basically to campaign in municipal elections. Okay? And what do they say? We will liberate Hyderabad. We'll call it Bhagyanagar. So that is a direct this thing to an emotional appeal. You're othering the Muslim now. That is the reason why the BJP, with the exception of Narendra Modi, funnily, supported the separation of Telangana from Andhra Pradesh. Narendra Modi said, you're killing the mother to give birth to this child. Okay, that is very surprising because I don't hold that man in high esteem. Now, the thing is that you have to other. So what does K.T. Ramarao say? K.T. Ramarao says you're playing divisive politics. You're dividing people on the lines of Muslim and non-Muslim. Muslim and non-Muslim is how you are dividing people. And when the Sri Krishna Committee was taking the opinion of political leaders, Asaduddin OIC said, we support a combined Andhra Pradesh. I mean, he said we support the existence of the Andhra Pradesh as it is. Don't break it. And the reason why he said that was a tactical reason. The tactical reason was that if Telangana becomes separated, then the BJP will they'll target the Muslims and try to get a foothold here. And if they end up getting a foothold, then that is not good for the Muslims. So he said the security, and I'm quoting him verbatim, the security of Muslims lies in leaving Andhra Pradesh as it is. That is what he said. Okay. Now, the interesting part is K.T. Ramarao is accusing the BJP of divisive politics. K.T. Ramarao is accusing the BJP of divisive politics. I want to know, what is a TRS? How did separate Telangana happen? Isn't that a division? Isn't that a division? You played divisive politics. People played along with you because they saw an opportunity later on. It's just a matter of time before the BJP takes over. Just a matter of time. So there are this, these things have inbuilt structures of, while at one level you are succeeding, at another level you're failing, because you're also promoting without knowing the same thing that somebody else can do to you. And there was a caste angle. People were saying we want a BC Telangana. Come on. Is that a ground for formation of a state? Caste? Ground for a formation of a state? Now I'll ask Madam Padma Navanand a question. I have given you rational arguments about how these fasces were built, how they are continuing, and how new fasces are coming up, challenging the old fasces. Mine, I consider to be a voice of reason. How many people will be behind me? How many people will see me as a leader who is saying the right thing? Nobody.
So maybe a few, the one who really thinks from their conscience and
How many? How
try.
many?
Yeah, that's what. Very few.
Yeah. How many? Will I be able to build a movement?
No.
Yeah. I won't be able to build a movement. Even by speaking the full truth, not by speaking the half truth.
Right.
I will not. First of all, the goons from different parties will come baying for my blood and probably take care of me. They'll first warn me, and then if I don't listen to them, they'll probably bump me off.
Right.
Yeah. So that is how fascists work. The voice of reason doesn't work. Yes, Akshay.
People like half truth.
Sorry?
People like half truths.
People like half truths. People like to feel that they have been victimized. Because
So the
all of us,
factor of pressure also works here, right? Even though you're not willing to, but you have to.
yes, because otherwise you stand out in a crowd. You don't want to do that. That's what
Right.
I was trying to tell you.
Hmm.
You don't want to stand out in a crowd because then you don't know what the consequences are.
Right.
So you can become a fasci without opening your mouth. When you don't open your mouth, you are still a member of a fasci. Even if you don't agree with that fasci, you are a member of the fasci if you don't open your mouth. I forget who said this. For bad to flourish, all that is required is the few good men that there are to keep quiet. I don't agree. I don't agree with that. The few good men, if they speak, they are taken care of. Bad will flourish irrespective of these people opening their mouths or not. That is absolutely wrong. It's a very wrong thing. So,
Yes, sir. It's like the good man's evil can encourage the bad man.
yeah,
Their silence.
absolutely. So, I'll
Sir,
close. Yeah, please.
according to me, people are emotional rather than rational.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I have no disagreement with you. That's why people choose issues which are likely to affect you emotionally. The othering of someone is playing on your emotions. The othering of someone is playing on your emotions. Okay? You say the Muslims, they have destroyed our temples. How many temples have they destroyed? Who has the figures? Nobody has the figures. The Muslims have destroyed our culture. Then why are we still here? How are we still here with 82% population? After 1,000 years of Muslim rule and another 300 years of Christian rule, how are the Hindus still the majority? How? That nobody will tell you. That nobody will tell you. That is how ideologues and leaders present their points of view as they present them as ideologies. Okay, I'll shut up now. I think you must have had it. One day one of you is going to find out where I live and come with a knife or something and rid me of society or rid society of me. Sorry. So,
No, sir. We are rational. We won't do that.
yeah. Anyway, so tomorrow I'll pick up two aspects of ideology. One is what I have picked up today is that how ideologues present some ideas which are not ideologies as ideologies. That's what I've been doing so far. And today I presented you the psychological angle of it by talking about, yesterday I talked about Marcuse, and today I talked about Freud and Reich. Uh, so tomorrow we'll go on to the other two views of ideology as a worldview, the vantage, which I had started and didn't complete because I thought I should first finish this and then go to that. Because if I finished with that, then it would be difficult to come back to this. So that I had put on a hold. I'll finish that and I'll take up the Marxist view of ideology, and then we'll kind of proceed further. I'm open to questions and arguments and to anything else you want to say to me. You're free to say anything, and I'm open.
Sir, who are the main influences on Hitler?
Who are the main influences on Hitler? Hitler himself claimed that Hegel was one of the influences. He also claimed that Nietzsche was an influence. Two great philosophers whose names he sullied. And he also talked about Martin Heidegger. In fact, much against Heidegger's wishes, in the 1930s, he made Heidegger attend Nazi party meetings. Okay, and unfortunately, therefore, for a brief while, Heidegger basically developed a reputation of being a Nazi, which he was not actually. But he was so afraid of Hitler, he was so afraid of his coercive tactics that he actually attended meetings of the Nazis. Uh, but his main, as Hitler himself stated, it was Hegel and uh, what's his name? Nietzsche. Okay. But
Sir,
for all the wrong reasons. Yeah, sorry. Carry on.
no, sir, please continue if it's
No,
clear.
finished. I finished.
Okay. So my question is about this existential anxiety.
Mm.
Now, Sigmund, did he say that religion can be one of the ways to get a solution for that anxiety? And is religion the only way, or what can the other solutions be?
He talked about religions coming up and playing, especially in the ancient period when man had less scientific tools at his disposal and didn't know anything about the universe. At that particular time, he says religion came as something, and not knowing anything about yourself and the universe is the cause of existential anxiety. Okay. And therefore, he says religions came into being and succeeded. But when he's talking about religions, he's not talking about religions in the strict sense of religions. In the strictest sense, if you talk about religions, there are only three religions in the world. One is Judaism, the other is Christianity, the third is Islam. The others are all some kind of cosmologies, different kinds. They're not all cosmologies are not the same. All cosmologies are not the same, but they are basically cosmologies. And he includes them in his category of religions. because even cosmologies have prayers. Okay, so praying to a power that is you consider to be supreme, however that power may be, or whatever that power may be, or whatever your conception of that power may be. But he says you create a power and pray to it and hope that it takes care of you. Now, if you want my personal view, I think Freud wasn't very correct there. Freud wasn't very correct there. First and foremost, he shouldn't have lumped cosmologies together with these three religions, because the way a cosmology functions is very different from the way in which a religion functions. In a cosmology, you accept your insignificance. In a religion, you don't accept your insignificance. So there is a fundamental difference between cosmologies and religions. Okay, you don't accept your insignificance. Today, I must say though, that the way Hindu is being talked about, this whole Hinduism that was created supposedly as a philosophy by Raja Ram Mohan Roy, has definitely taken religious overtones, with the exception of one particular thing, which is that it continues to be polytheistic, whereas religions, by definition, are monotheistic. So it is not really a religion, but it is also not really not a religion. So it's no longer a cosmology, it's no longer a religion. We have to find a new name for it.
Right.
Anybody else?
So,
Yes, ma'am.
you said middle class are afraid to revolution. In the French Revolution, middle class are the most responsible one, no, sir? How can?
Do you know what was the state of the people during the French Revolution? It was not
State?
the middle class. It was not just the middle class. Do you know in what state people were during the French Revolution?
Nobles classes, that's it.
No, 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 no.
Uh,
There was no food to eat.
okay, their condition.
Yes, there was no food to eat. The march from Paris to Versailles. Okay, the king and the queen lived in Versailles in the La
Mm,
Palais Royal, or the Royal Palace. They lived in that, the king and queen, Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. And on the way to Versailles from Paris, they were marching. All the people, what they did is they stormed the Bastille. They stormed the Bastille, which is Bastille. It is pronounced Bastille, and you barely pronounce the L. It's Bastille, like that. So that was the biggest prison in France. They stormed the Bastille and they set the prisoners free. The women of France took part in this march from Paris, or Paris as it is called in France, okay, or in French rather. It's not Paris, it's Paris, but let's call it Paris. Let's not get too French. Uh, so they walked all the way by freeing the prisoners on the way, and they broke open the gates of the royal palace at Versailles, and the women stood in the front and shouted, "We want bread." That was the slogan, because there was no food to eat, and the king and the queen were least bothered. Louis XVI declared, "I am the state." In the Estates General, he declared that I am the state, because by that time the state had come in. And Marie Antoinette answered these women when they said, "We want bread." She said, "This is not a kitchen, go find bread somewhere else." That is how she answered them. So that infuriated the mob. They went into the palace, got hold of the king and the queen, and brought them back to Paris and guillotined them. Okay, you know the guillotine. It's actually pronounced guillot. LL in French is pronounced ya. So guillotine it is. And what did they do? The guillotine is something, it's a blade, knife blade, that is hung in a frame a few meters above the ground, so that it comes down with great force, and your head is put in a, what should I say? In the frame itself, there is a depression in which your neck is put, and after you're secured and you can't move, somebody releases the blade and that comes and decapitates you. That was the end that Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI met.
Sir, beheading is also similar.
Sorry?
Beheading is also similar to guillotine.
You can behead people in other ways. Guillotine is one way of beheading. You can also behead people in other ways.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not an expert in that. Huh? I only am like this, like this parasite that gets into your head and chews your brain. Beheading is not my specialty. Mm. Yes, ma'am. So, Rachna Garu, that is how the revolution happened. It's not the middle class.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. The Girondins and the, what were the other people? Jacobins, or the Jacobins and the Girondins, as they were called. Those were the middle class people, especially the Jacobins under the leadership of Robespierre. He unleashed a reign of terror. Okay, a reign of terror where the streets of Paris were flowing with blood. So the French Revolution is a true revolution. The American Revolution is not a true revolution. The French Revolution is a true revolution. The Chinese Revolution is a true revolution. The Indian revolution is a true revolution.
Sir, so
Yeah.
can we draw a comparison of this French Revolution because the have-nots were uh, protesting with that of the Marxist ideology, the Proletariat Revolution? Though
Uh,
the French king, it wasn't from the capitalist view, but still they had the power and they had the resources. So can we draw a comparison like this?
no, some form of capitalism did set in. It wasn't like there was no capitalism at that time. Just because there was a king and a queen doesn't mean that there was no capitalism. There was capitalism, but even the capitalism floundered due to lack of resources. So it was not really a working class revolution in a Marxist sense of the term, though the French Revolution is an inspiration and the formation of the Paris Commune following the French Revolution. Those were inspirations for Marx, who came later in the
Right.
19th century, but you can't really say one on technical grounds because you can't say that it's a proletarian revolution because at that time nobody had advocated a proletarian revolution. You will be creating an anachronism if you say that. The second reason is that there was capitalism and capitalists also became a part of the revolution.
Oh,
The capitalists also became a part of revolution because they had nothing to work with. So it was a mass revolution. That is why I am saying the French Revolution, the Chinese Revolution, and the Indian Revolution. These are mass-based revolutions, absolutely mass-based revolutions. These three revolutions. And that's why they stand out. They stand out. All sections of society participated in them.
right. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any other question? Well, I guess then that's it. All right. I'll see you tomorrow and we'll pick up ideology. We'll pick up the two notions of ideology, the two dominant notions. There are many notions. I'm not going to go into all of them. And then we'll also look at, are all ideologies political or are ideologies necessarily political? That is also a question that we need to consider. We'll finish with that and get on to libertarianism by day after tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Done.
Okay. Okay then. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good day, sir.
Yeah, you too.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.